Welcome to the first edition of the SEC version of Behind Enemy Lines. Uh, Obviously, my name is Brandon Drumm, OUinsider.com. This is Cousin Shane. We want to thank him for joining us from that SEC podcast. I know if you've been following college football, you know that SEC podcast. It's become one of the staples on anybody's podcast rotation, particularly during college football season. So again, thank you, Cousin Shane, for joining us today to talk a little Tennessee Vols, the team that you grew up cheering for, the team you
Yeah.
grew up following. There's a big game in Norman today, or not
Yeah,
today,
is
but
there?
Saturday.
Yeah, is there?
So
Is there? I've not heard about it this week. No,
did you?
that's I. It's funny when I'm watching this. Not only is it your first SEC football game, but you got Josh. It's almost like
Oh
they
yeah,
wrote a book just for this. And when they were putting the schedule together, they say, oh, they're going to like this one. This was a little bit orchestrated. It had to be, but I'm looking
facts.
forward to it. Game day going to be there. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna be able to make it, but my cousin Mike, SEC Mike, you know him on Twitter, he will be down there drinking cold beer and hanging out with you guys. So he's been down to Norman twice. I'm afraid I'm going to lose him. He's been down there twice now. Absolutely love it. He takes his dad every time, my uncle, and they have a blast.
uh, you know, I you talk about losing him potentially. I was kind of sifting through his timeline the other day and saw that there was Tennessee fans kind of dogging on Oklahoma's defense, and he got on there real quick and was like, you guys might want to tone it down a little bit. They're one of the best defenses in the SEC. Obviously, we're going to see if that really is true on Saturday. But over the first three games, I think it was Western Carolina, NC State, and then Kent
Yeah.
State. Kent State lost to the Sisters of the Traveling Poor before that. University right before they played you guys.
Yeah,
They,
volunteer blind. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
they are they are 100% the worst team in Division One football right now. That's Nick Saban's Kent State, mind
Yeah.
you.
Yes.
So, I want to ask just your overall, just a broad stroke generalization of what you think this Tennessee Vols team is after three games.
Well, I mean, if you were to ask a common Vol fan, you would think it was the God's gift of football. Is coming down to Oklahoma
Mm-hmm.
and potential best team to ever suit up for the Tennessee Volunteers, even better than that '98 team.
Better than
They're
Peyton
they're they're
Manning's
drinking,
teams.
brother. They're drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm just warning you guys know this.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you put out there, I
They're on
see it
it.
on my timeline right now. They are actively searching, and you better if you don't win this game, it doesn't end on Saturday. This thing will drag out for another 10, 15 days. So just warning you, Tennessee Vols have got a very, very passionate fan base
Mhm.
online, as I'm learning, Oklahoma does too. So they are definitely not backing down from this argument. But that's the beauty of this football game is not only the storylines coming into it, but the fact that you've got two teams expecting to win, that just adds fuel to the fire.
Mhm.
Because, as an SEC homer, I've seen plenty of these top matchups where one fan base is expecting win, the other one, and it just makes for either great football or one really butthurt fan base. So one of the two is going to happen this weekend, and I'm looking forward to watching it.
I think it's 100% guaranteed both are going to happen. We just don't know which. I think I think I
Yeah.
think everybody kind of tends to lean towards the butthurt will be the OU
Yeah.
fans after Saturday, and the team that is going to be over there stroking their ego is the
Yeah.
Tennessee Vols fans. And after 3 weeks, how can you sit there with a sane mind and say otherwise? If you've
Yeah.
watched and I I want your take on this. Just I I think NC State is horribly overrated. I think they're
Yeah.
not very good. They almost lost to La Tech. They were down 20-3 to La Tech at home.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And so I don't know what to make. I don't know what to make of Tennessee just as much as I don't know what to make of Oklahoma. And it's not that I don't think Tennessee's a good team, because I think they're one of the top five teams in the country, in my opinion,
Yeah.
right now, playing at least. But I don't know if that's like 22 version Oklahoma when they just raked over everybody the first 3 weeks,
Yeah.
including at Nebraska, and then proceeded to be 6-7 by the end of the season. No, I don't think that's going to happen to Tennessee, obviously. But I think when we start doing this 3 weeks in, Shane, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. We kind of just we live week to week. We try to piece it together the first quarter of the season and go, well, that's what this team is, and we
Right.
really don't know, right?
No, yeah. No, it's all gut feel. I mean, if Tennessee were, if you really thought Tennessee was just going to come in here and blow the doors off the Sooners, then it wouldn't be a 7 point game. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? With that, it's a one score game, so we're going to have this little battle on our hands. But I think you hit the nail on the head because we all do this. Even as a fan, you're saying, okay, well they beat this team, and then that team beat this
Mhm.
team, and then in your mind you're like, well, then this team's got to be better than that team. We all do this, and I've even done it as a Tennessee homer. Growing up, like when we sucked, I was like, well, we beat this team, and this team beat this team, and they competed for a national championship, so we were close. So you do it on the opposite end as well.
Mhm.
But I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about schedule, because when you go through the first 3 weeks, you're really looking at the first 3 games that Oklahoma played, the first 3 games that Tennessee played, and you're saying which one's true? Is Oklahoma really going to struggle against all these teams coming up in the SEC, or is Tennessee just going to steamroll these programs? NC State's not as good as we thought it were. I get that. In fact, if you watch the other NC State games, every one of them has been a close one. They're
Yeah.
2-1, but Western Carolina took them to the fourth quarter. I think they were up in that game, and then Lafayette, if I'm not mistaken, was tied going into the fourth quarter. This is NC State, like you said, is not a good football team. But I could go the opposite side. I said, you know what, Tulane is. They gave Kansas State a hard time. They gave you a number. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I think they got one of the most underrated football coaches in the country. This is a good football team. They got a good quarterback, and if anything, Oklahoma may be a little bit more battle tested coming into this matchup, and I think that's important. If you're looking for growth and development, what do you learn off a 70-point win against, your basically a scrimmage against a middle school, if you will? Did a little mistake in that game get overlooked because of how good the rest of the team is?
Mm.
Because that little mistake against a team like Oklahoma may be a 5-yard loss, maybe an interception or something along those lines. That's the way I look at it. It's the small, minute mistakes that were made in that Kent State. Common fans not going to recognize it. I mean, and I hope Tennessee fans, again, I'm coming from a Tennessee, what do you cross enemy lines here? So as a Tennessee fan, you better hope and pray that in film study that they caught it, because if they don't, you better believe Oklahoma did.
I as well as I know Josh Heupel, he caught it. He caught it. He
Yeah.
caught it. That is a savant if there's ever a savant when it comes to football. That guy knows him some football.
Yeah.
I was just rewatching it was a college game day piece from K-State, Oklahoma in 2000. And they were talking about just how cerebral Heupel was.
Mhm.
And if you talk to any OU fan at that point in time in Josh Heupel's career, every OU fan knew he wasn't going to make it in the NFL, even though he did decent with the Packers.
Yeah.
Every OU fan knew that he was so smart that he was eventually going to be a head coach somewhere at
Mhm.
some point in time. Did they? And I think Oklahoma fans at that point in time were going, when Bob Stoops retires, please, Jesus, make him the Oklahoma head coach. Obviously, things transpired after that. I don't want to say there's hard feelings anymore, but I think there's enough history,
Yeah.
obviously, that if he gets the chance to put his foot on Oklahoma's neck, he's
Mhm.
gonna do it this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
He has every right to do it as well. I don't. What's that in Tennessee? What's that feeling like as far as that dynamic? The Heupel Oklahoma, is it being talked about the way it is here?
Well, every hop reel I've seen has mentioned. I've seen the clip where Stoops fired. I mean, I've probably seen that one a million times this week.
Mhm.
Because they are building that up, and that's the one thing about this game. If if you remove the team names, okay, it's Team A, Team B here. And let's say Tennessee's Team B. I
Mhm.
would say this is a classic trap game here. You've been petted, you've been told how great you are. You're coming into a hostile environment. You should steamroll these guys, but what you don't know is Team A is nothing like the teams that you've played up to this point. And Oklahoma has a really good shot to beat you, or in this scenario, Team A. I say all that to say this is now a personal game. And, I don't think you overlook this. Isn't no longer and I'm not saying Oklahoma is a trap game, but I'm just saying it is a game that if you were just reading the clippings and being told that how
Yeah.
good you are, you may overlook Oklahoma because you see a team that struggled against Tulane up front. That defensive front's licking their chops. They can't wait to get over here. You're watching a team like Houston come down to the wire, and then all of a sudden you're just like, yeah, we're gonna. I don't think that happens now that this game is so personal. And one thing that I've learned about Josh Heupel is, by gosh, he carries it.
Yes, he
And
does.
brother, if you ask Eli Drinkwitz, and even last year, Drink's the same way. Drink did the same thing to him. He kind of ran that score up. He's not afraid that it became a personal thing.
Mhm.
But you better believe if Tennessee and Mizzou ever meet again and Heupel has the upper hand, he will not take his foot off his neck, because that's the kind of attitude. He's that play. He's a game. He's a gamer. He's a guy that loves competition. He's not afraid of competition. And he wasn't successful at Oklahoma. And that deep down inside, that's where he wanted to be the whole
Yeah.
time. He saw a future where he would be the head coach there at Oklahoma. And I'm not saying that it will never happen, but I am saying that this game is become personal, and if Tennessee does jump on Oklahoma, he will not stop. He'll make sure every fan in that stands realize that they just missed out on a great opportunity.
Little known fact, I don't know if you all know this in Tennessee. His family still lives in Edmond, Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whole family. My oldest boy played against his nephew multiple times in 7-on-7 this summer. And his nephew's a good quarterback too. Shocking,
Yeah.
right? Shocker. Um, so I there's that dynamic. There's the fact that the family still lives in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you call them a gamer, which I think is just so spot on.
Yeah.
If you go back to the 2000 season, nobody thought Oklahoma was going to be any good, and he literally carried them. Carried them
Yeah.
with a broken left arm, by the way. Not literally broken, but his shoulder and his elbow was all inflamed the whole season. He couldn't put as much on it, but he was so cerebrally smart and such a gamer
Yeah.
that they won. And
Yeah.
there's a story, and you've probably never heard this story ever. And I'm going to let the Tennessee fans know that you all are going to love this. It's media day at
Yeah.
Oklahoma, and he gets on it. Josh Heupel gets on the elevator with a bunch of media people, and he's just standing there, and they're talking about what they expect out of Oklahoma and everything. And he's just quiet sitting over there. And they all turn and ask him, "What are your expectations?" He looks them dead serious, looks them dead in the eye, and goes, "We're winning a national title this year." They won the national title that year. How crazy is that?
That's
They were 7-5 the year before.
that's
And the
right.
year before that, they were 5-6.
It's like that Babe Ruth pointing toward the stands.
Yeah.
He's just calling out his and
But
and,
that's who
and
he is.
that's exactly who he is, and he doesn't hide it.
Nope.
And sometimes it offends other teams. That I the Kent State game, we're up 30-0, 30-0 first quarter, and we kick an onside kick.
Yeah.
And everybody that I got tagged so many times when that happened, that Josh Heupel's an asshole and he shouldn't have done that. But they saw it, and now
Mhm.
you have to prepare for it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Josh isn't thinking about Kent State when he does that. Josh is thinking about Oklahoma, because now you're going to have to spend 20, 30 minutes preparing for a potential onside kick, So
Yeah.
he's playing chess while a lot of teams play checkers, and
Yep.
and that's what I like about him.
So I want to talk to you about Dylan Samson. And we'll
Yeah.
get to Nico here in just a second, and obviously the front four for Tennessee, which is James Pierce and all those guys. But Dylan Sampson, I think he has 357 yards
Yeah.
already this year, in 3 games, and obviously he hasn't played a full game yet.
No.
What You've watched Oklahoma enough to see how they're one of the top run defenses in all of college football. Dusty Dvorak came on our show on our post practice and talked about how he thinks that is the real storyline.
Yep.
That's where the game is going to be won and lost for both teams. Can Tennessee establish the run with Dylan Sampson? Can Oklahoma stop the run? If they can force Nico to be the guy that has to win the ball game with that crowd and
Yeah.
with that defense, being that he's never played in a he's never played in something that's going to be this ruckus and this loud with the communication issues and all that
Right.
that's going to happen. It's going to happen. I mean, it'd be like Jackson Arnold going to Knoxville, right? Like that's just
Yeah.
not going to it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
Regardless of the potential outcome or not, there's going to be some peaks and valleys a little bit, at least to start. Um, do you see it as that being where the game's won lost between both programs or both teams? Just because Tennessee, as much as they like to pass, Heupel wants to get that
It's
run game going to set up
yeah.
the over the top pass for them. Am I
Brother,
wrong on that?
I'm telling you right now, this is a rushing team. This is if you stop, that's how you beat Tennessee. And I've seen it. I saw it 2022. I keep I'm going to skip 23. 23 was a great year for a couple of reasons, but 22 in particular is what I mirrored this team with, especially
Mm,
with Hendon Hooker.
yeah,
But when they were able to stop that rushing attack, like the Georgia Bulldogs, they sold out against the run. And when they made Tennessee one dimensional, their secondary was good enough to hold those receivers in check.
yeah,
In fact, Tennessee blamed the rain that game, and I did too a little bit because how does Jalen Hyatt go from a hero to zero all of a sudden? Well,
yeah.
that's kind of what Oklahoma's gonna. I feel like it's gonna have to do here. They're gonna have to sell out a little more than probably they would like to the running game. Stop Nico, stop Samson. It's easier said than done. But
Mm-hmm.
if you do that, this is a team that's never had Nico's never like you mentioned the road games. He went to a bowl game, did Iowa. He did a neutral site game with NC State.
And
He
both were
truly
Tennessee
yeah, we were
games. Yeah,
we were there.
yeah.
Okay, so Tennessee was representing there, so he's not really had that, but I have seen little flashes of like the NC State game when he throws that interception. He didn't let that get to him.
Mm-hmm.
He was so part of you is again you're trying to do these checks and balances. What if this happens? What if that? If you get Nico one dimensional, this is something we've not seen yet. So if
Yeah.
Nico goes one dimensional, can he just trust his arm and his progressions? And I feel like the pressure it's not so much on the defensive line as it will be that secondary because they're going to be on islands. And if
Mm-hmm.
they can handle those islands, then it could be in your favor for sure.
Yeah. Beginning of the year, Phil Steele named the OU secondary the best secondary in college
I'm just
football.
saying
Yeah,
that's
but no,
that's
no, that's
yeah.
why that's the point. That's my point is that I don't know that I believe that is what I was about to say is
Oh,
like,
I
I
got you.
don't, I don't, yeah, yeah. Look, they have Peyton Bowen and they have Billy Bowman. I would
Yeah.
argue that that's the best safety duo in college football. And I think there will be a lot of people that are smarter than me that would agree with that.
Yeah.
Where Oklahoma's down Gentry Williams, who was their all everything corner. He hurt his shoulder again. He will not be playing in the game. So they're going to be playing, obviously, Kenai Walker and other guys there that are younger, less experienced. There last year, Gentry hurt for those Tennessee's. I'm letting y'all know, Tennessee fans. Gentry led college football for a little bit in interceptions.
Yeah.
And then he hurt his shoulder right after the Texas game, and he just wasn't the same. And then he had surgery, and now he re-injured his shoulder again. So there's that side is susceptible. And I was watching the film guy or whatever that you ever watch that where the guy breaks down I can't remember what he's called, the film guy or whatever.
You Brooks? You talking about
Brooks,
Brooks?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, this guy's
Yeah.
like Rain Man.
Yes, he is. So I was watching him last night and he was talking about Kenai Walker, who's
Yeah.
replacing Gentry Williams. And he said exactly what you just said. That's going to be where if Oklahoma does stop the run and they make Nico pass, that is the matchup he's watching, because if
Right.
they don't get that right, uh-oh. So, and I agree with him, completely agree with him. As far as Nico goes, you brought up the interception against NC State. I think he's thrown two. He's got 6 touchdowns, two
Yeah.
interceptions.
Right.
I haven't got to see those interceptions yet. I haven't watched that part yet. What did you see in those interceptions? Like, was it was he
One
confused? Was
No, no,
it
no.
was
One was his fault. I felt like, or maybe a receiver. I mean, that's the bad thing about interceptions. A lot of times the quarterback gets the blame, but it could be a receiver not running the proper route. But
yeah,
the other one was he was hit, so no real help there. Kind of
yeah,
like Jackson's interception last year. Just under pressure, got that situation. So I again, no, I haven't seen as many dumb mistakes. I mean, you got to remember they're coming from Joe Milton to this guy. So you're talking about comparison. It's like, even a bad pass from Nico looks like a good pass from Milton. So I feel like, yeah, no, the breakdowns I keep seeing is his progression. There was one play in particular in that NC State game where it ended up getting called back for a penalty, but Nico is constantly looking to throw, not looking to run. And I'm because these two quarterbacks are going to be constantly compared. You might as well get
yeah.
ready for it. These guys are going to
Same
go back and
class, same
forth.
everything. Yeah,
I feel like, and I got to meet Jackson. Jackson's a fantastic kid. I think he's a super athlete, but I do think at moments he looks to run instead of
hmm,
looking for that play downfield. It may just be 3 or 4 yards, but more likely that receiver is going to make more yardage after the catch than he will running the football.
hmm,
So I don't think it has quite clicked over. I'm seeing little flashes of it, but I feel like Nico's a little bit further along in that department. He's constantly looking to not run the football, which even as a mobile quarterback, which he's not, he's not. That's not what he's there for, but he can run the football. He will be probably the second leading rusher on Tennessee's team this weekend, but that's not going to be by design. That's because something broke down and he had to get a
yeah.
first down.
On that flip side, well, yeah, on the flip side, that defensive line for you guys is super talented. Now, statistically, and again, I agree with Dusty Dvorak. What he said on our post practice was 105, 105th in sacks this year. In the early season is like, you just kind of push that to the side. That doesn't matter. One, because I'm sure you guys haven't shown that
Yeah,
much as
yeah,
far as defense goes, and a lot of the stunts, a lot of the different looks and fronts and shifts and slants and all that type of stuff. You guys have not shown, I'm betting 90% of it.
yeah.
So that's going to play into the stat part of it, in my opinion. But outside of James Pierce, what's somebody that OU fans should be going, okay, this is that guy that you got to watch.
Well, I don't think it's just one guy. Yeah, I think when you're looking at the Tennessee Vols, the one thing that the stat maybe that really stands out to you is the fact that the plays per game, they are
Yeah.
so deep on that defensive front that they can keep fresh bodies in there. That's something that Josh Heupel's not been able to do. He talked about it during SEC media days. It's the deepest football team he's ever had. That's primarily what he's talking about. And this game is won in the trenches when
Yeah.
it's all said and done. And as you can see, Oklahoma's struggling with that offensive front. This defensive front, they're going to have so many different bodies in there, so many fresh legs in there that they're in for the fight of their life. And yes, they don't have the stats, they don't have the sacks or anything like that, but Pierce, it's coming. I
Yeah.
mean, these boys are going to get theirs, and I feel like that is going to be I hate to say it, it's like the glaring battle. Like we just talked about on the other side of the football, what's going to be really good. Like everybody goes back to this offensive line and Tennessee's defensive front and how lopsided that's going to be. I do worry about Oklahoma in that regards because Tennessee has, I mean, 3 weeks, none of them have had to put in a quarter of play between them.
Yeah. That's fresh legs. That
I'm telling, and
yeah.
but that's how you keep them healthy. That's how you
Mhm.
keep them all. Some of the problems your guys are running into is they're having to play 4-quarter games. You shouldn't play a 4-quarter game against Houston. You should.
No.
As much as I pumped up Houston and Tulane, that shouldn't have been a ball game. Those
No.
guys should have been out in the third quarter. And we start working on some of this competitive
Eh,
depth, and unfortunately, we've not been able to do that.
in both games, it looked like Oklahoma was headed to that exact thing, 14
Yeah,
nothing,
yeah,
and then obviously 21 nothing to start the Tulane game, and it was just like they just kind of slammed on the brakes and
yeah,
like, oh, we're gonna slow down a little bit, and
yeah.
yeah, I don't understand. Whatever. They just got really sloppy.
It felt
I,
it felt too. I don't know. You're gonna have to be a little bit more aggressive in these games, and I felt
yeah,
like you've been dialed back a little bit yourselves, a little bit
yeah,
more
they haven't
vanilla
been
than.
stretching the field at all. Yeah,
No,
you're right,
no.
but they haven't had Nick Anderson to help Burks, and I think
Now is
that
he playing? Is he
he
back?
is
Is he
playing
official?
this
Okay,
weekend. Yes, and so is Hickman, and so is Everett.
okay,
I'm not 100% sure on Everett, but everybody says Hickman is going to play the center, the starting center, the all conference guy out of
yeah,
SMU. Uh, 33, 35, 36 starts, something like that. So he helps Oklahoma a lot and allows Sexton to move back out to tackle because he can now make the calls and everything for
I got
everybody.
you.
So it helps Oklahoma's offensive line substantially. Now we'll see how much it helps. Obviously,
Yeah,
Sexton is an potential on conference guy, potential second, third round pick type guy, but outside of him, um, that offensive line, there's a lot of unknowns still. There's tons of unknowns.
yeah,
That's why, to me, outside of Oklahoma stopping the run,
hmm
Tennessee, the offensive line has to play the game of their life this week, or
but
it's
yeah, vice versa. And you gotta establish a running game.
yeah,
You can't have your quarterback being the leading rusher here. That's not how this needs to work to beat a team like Tennessee Vols.
correct.
You've got to keep pounding at them. But then you draw. It's just like any game. You draw them up, and then all of a sudden you hit Dion or Nick if he's back. So that's what I want to see. Maybe not as a Tennessee homer. I don't want to see it this week, but moving forward, maybe you guys can work on that because I feel like that's what this offense has been missing. And,
Mhm.
and a lot of blame gets thrown to the offensive line. A lot of blame gets thrown on your quarterback. But, there's still, I'm seeing progression each week. You know what I'm saying? If I felt like it was stagnant or if they were falling back, that'd be one thing. But this is a team that is, even those guys that you're talking about, the healthy guys coming back here, the guys that have been out there have meaningful snaps
Yeah.
on. Tennessee doesn't have that. They're going against twos against Kent State. So is that a meaningful snap? I don't know. These guys, I feel like this is a blessing in disguise, and that's why I feel like Oklahoma will be a better team toward the end of the season than they are at the start.
That's probably a really fair point. I want to ask you, you've watched enough Oklahoma this year. What is the one thing you noticed outside of not having Nick Anderson at wide receiver or Jaden Gibson or Jalil Farouk, which just
Yeah.
people don't understand how good those guys are. Oklahoma at the start of the season looked like they might have arguably the best wide receiver unit in college football, and now it's
Yeah.
fast become not even remotely close to that. But that's what happens when you lose four of your top five guys.
Yeah.
Um, what did you notice? And it hasn't been talked about, and I think it needs to be talked about. What did you notice about Oklahoma's wide receivers? What have they done that has actually hindered Jackson Arnold more than anything else?
Hmm. That's a good question. Separation. Yeah.
That's one of the
Yeah.
things.
I'm not seeing.
Drops.
Yeah. Yeah. Drops is a big one, but I think just week one alone, there was some big plays to be made downfield, and I'm not seeing the separation that I thought
No, that's
they
fair. Yeah.
would. So, but you are correct. Drops is another one. It felt like that, especially at week one, we relied more on our tight end than the
Yeah.
receivers.
Yeah. They've had, I want to say it was 13, 14 drops in 3 games. And if you
Yeah.
go and you look at, and they were good passes, like they were like spot on passes. And 5 of them were third downs
Yeah.
and would have been first downs. 2 of them were, no, 3 of them were guaranteed touchdowns, like guaranteed touchdowns,
Yeah.
just flat drops and drive killers, drive stoppers. It is what it is. and that can't happen. You do that against Tennessee, and you're getting blown out by 4
Yep.
touchdowns.
That's right. It's the important ones. It's the red zones, the
Yeah.
third downs, like you said, the fourth downs. Those one have got to be automatic. If it touches the gloves, you got to bring that in. So again, but young players, this is what we learn, and the more valuable the reps that you have with them, the more chemistry you develop with you. You kind of learn that touch. We go back
Mhm.
to Tennessee. Joe Milton didn't. That was one thing, he didn't have touch.
No,
Everything
but
was
he could.
100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So those receivers had to learn to catch everything. So you probably think maybe that's why they're doing so well this season, because they were, doing the jugs machine all last year.
A living, breathing jugs machine in
Yeah,
the
that's
game
right, man.
that moves very fast. um, I guess lastly, the Tennessee secondary again. Is that a strength weakness like in your mind right now, or is it an unknown just
It's an
because?
unknown.
Yeah,
That's your question mark, because it's not getting past that front 6, 7.
yeah.
They look like heroes, but again, it's an area that hasn't really been tested. I think about the Kentucky Georgia game last week. I felt like it. Well, maybe that's not a good example. You're starting to see a little bit of this kind of separation, if you will, and we're starting to realize what we're good at, where we're bad at. Some of
Mhm.
these teams that hit the ground running and kind of got a gimmick style offense, or I talk about like Vanderbilt. They run this. I don't know if you've seen a Vandy game, but it's
Mhm.
it's it's like an option out of shotgun with passing.
Yeah,
I've never
it's
seen anything
spread
like
veer.
it.
Yeah, spread
Yeah,
veer. Yep, yep.
it's one of the wildest offense, but people are starting to catch on. Georgia
Mhm.
State won this week, so these little flaws that your team may have. Week 1, you were able to hide it. Week 3, you're not able to anymore. So, I can pretty damn guarantee that there's some mistakes on that side of the ball that maybe you and I haven't noticed yet, but Venables will.
Yeah,
So
yeah. We talked about how close this game. This is my final question for you. Again, everybody, if you want to watch a really good podcast, go watch that
well,
SEC
thanks, man.
podcast with cousin Shane and SEC Mike. It's really good. It's on the rotation in the Drum household all the time. So, um, yeah, we're not going to do score predictions here. So if y'all came here
Yeah.
looking for that, that's not happening. That said, 7 point spread right now, 7.5, whatever. Do you see the game playing out closer than fans anticipate, and or do you, without giving a score or winner or whatever, either side, do you think it's going to be as ballyhooed of a game as everybody's trying to crack this thing up to be?
Good question, man. And I without tipping my hat, I'm telling you right now, it's going to be within 7 points. The winner will win within 7 points. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think this is going to be a damn football game, 4 quarters. There may be one team that may have to rally. There may be another team that may just kind of hold off. I can see that type of game going on,
Mhm.
and that's kind of when I look at it. I think of scenarios. I pretend in my head how this football game's going to play out. And I don't, there's a part, you may never heard this, but there's a acronym that goes around in Tennessee. It's called BVS, and it's battered Vol syndrome. And what that is
Never heard that.
we've got lured in on, this is the year we're back. There's no way we're going to lose this game. And then all of a sudden we do. And it's just that. So if Oklahoma jumps out on Tennessee and goes 14-0 or something like that, you're going to have a bunch of Tennessee fans freaking out thinking, God, I knew it. Too good to be true. We're back. That old meme with the helicopters flying around
Mhm.
and hello darkness, my old friend. That is at the surface. Now we've been trying to keep it quiet and we're trying to ignore it, even though it's sitting over there in the corner of our room. We know that it's there, but this, brother, I feel like if you remove the narratives, the game day, all the noise, this comes down to two really good football teams, good at, I think, one of the best offenses in the country, going against one of the best defenses in the country. I mean, you cannot paint a better picture for a great football game. And
Yeah.
and the best part is, I think this may be the best one that we've seen this year.
That's awesome. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm excited for it. And I wish you were coming down for it. I think OU fans would love to see you around, number
Oh,
one.
I
But yeah,
well, I almost did. I almost planned on doing this one, and I was telling you off air there. I do plan on seeing an Oklahoma game, so
yeah,
I'll be up in Mizzou, watching that one on November 9th. So I don't
that's
know if
another
you
good
remember.
one.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember that little team up there. It likes to steal all your players, but that
Oh
that they.
God. Look at Shane with a parting shot as he leaves. All
Well,
right, that's going
hey,
to end this version of
no,
the
but that's what I love about you're going to realize every team hates every team in this
Mhm.
conference. We were not no SEC team was going to embrace Oklahoma and welcome you to this conference. In fact, they're not going to recognize you in this conference for a few years unless you start beating their ass, which again, I expect Oklahoma to do that to a lot of SEC teams. So you'll get your dues, but it is not going to be it is every team is going to find some reason to hate you. And I can't wait to check that one. I can't wait to check, I don't want to get the cart in front of the horse. I can't wait to check this game out. This is your first SEC game. I
Mhm.
mean, if I told you 10 years ago, on
Oh,
in September of 2024, you're going to be playing an SEC game against the Tennessee Vols. What would you have said?
ironically, 10 years ago, about this exact time, I was sitting in section one. I was working for another outlet. And I was sitting in section one with a couple of Tennessee fans behind me in
Uh
Norman,
huh.
Oklahoma, as Oklahoma and Tennessee played each other in a night game on ESPN. And so, no, I never thought Oklahoma would lead the Big 12. That is
Yeah.
correct. No, and who would? They were
Right.
running the Big 12. They were winning it almost every year. You don't walk away from that. But at the end of the day, I think Oklahoma saw that they weren't getting prepared for the playoffs the way they should
Yeah.
in the Big 12. And with it going to a 12-team playoff, this was a really good move
Yeah.
because you could afford some losses in tougher games, but at the same time, prepare yourself for the playoffs if you're good enough to make it and make a run because you're not going in not having played somebody of that stature. I think the 2017 Oklahoma team was capable of doing so. One, because the 2017, the Big 12 was really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And two, they played at Ohio State, which was a really good team, and worked them over. Um, they just choked it away against Georgia in an epic
Yeah.
game. Double overtime, Rose Bowl, one of the best games I've ever seen. Still to this day, unfortunately, Oklahoma lost, but it was still amazing. And I think that was the point where I think everybody kind of realized, okay, maybe Oklahoma could go into the SEC and compete against the best. Um, we're going to find out. And we're going to find out in 2024 if that's really true. And it starts on Saturday. Shane, thank you so
Yeah,
much for coming on with
absolutely.
us. Again, go watch that SEC podcast. Cousin Shane, SEC Mike, his cousin, SEC Mike, will be in Norman this week
That's right.
representing that SEC podcast. Uh, so make sure you
Yeah,
guys watch
drinking
every
cold
episode.
beer. Yeah, he'd be running around. You can't miss
Yep.
him. I think no, I don't want to ruin it, but I will say this: you boys will like his shirt. That's all. I'll leave it at that. But yeah,
I love it.
if you want to check us out, we don't take things too serious. Clearly,
No.
yeah, we're not a very physical show either, obviously, but we do like to drink cold beer, and we like to. It all started I think 7 years ago. There was just nothing to go around the league. I wanted to just kind of get a recap of everything around
Mhm.
the SEC, and Mike had this great idea. Like, why don't we just bounce around? And I was like, man, that's awesome. And I was kind of a fill in. I really am Mike's cousin. Everybody says you guys don't look alike, but surely he's my cousin. And I jumped on there. We got to going, and next thing you know, 7 years later, here we are. So, yeah. But if you're looking for, we're not looking to replace any show. We're just looking to make a recap around the league. So we
Yeah.
like to have fun, and I appreciate you having me on. I'd love to get out there to Oklahoma. I'd love to, because Mike sold me when he was telling me about all these places he's eating. There's a place, what is it, Swirlies? Does that sound familiar? Is that surely
Yeah. Yeah. Are you
some
talking
kind of,
about the Mont that has the swirlies?
yeah.
Yeah, the Mont. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
he's telling me about all these places I got to get out there and check out.
Mhm.
So he had me sold. I'm seeing pictures every fine meal he had over there, and I'm sure I'll see it this weekend. But yeah, I look forward to getting out there myself. I really, my goal is to go see yeah, you in Texas play.
That is, if you ever get the chance to do so, and I tell every SEC fan, and yep, SEC fans scoff at this. Josh Pate agrees it's the best rivalry in college football because of the setting, and the setting alone
Yeah,
it's the most amazing setting you'll ever be. People wait to get on the Ferris wheel to go sit at the top for 5 minutes, 2, 3 minutes, just so they can see down into the stadium and watch a few plays. No
yeah,
joke. Like they'll sit there for hours, and
that's awesome.
it's crazy. So it's so much fun the night before. People get arrested. If you get thrown in the drunk tank, they let you out at the end of the third quarter, so you can watch the end of the game the next day. So it's a different thing. It's
And
a very, very different thing,
I
but it's
saw the
fun.
prices. So the tickets are very expensive for Tennessee and Oklahoma, but they're like 3 times that for
Yeah.
that Texas Oklahoma
Mhm.
game. So, or Oklahoma Texas. Sorry, I forget which show I'm on here.
Yeah, yeah, but watch out
Yeah,
now.
well, it's 417 and Texas still sucks, right?
Yeah. I think OU fans are gonna like you. And Tennessee is the real UT, right?
Yeah, oh, without a doubt. Yeah,
There you
I'll
go.
I'll I'll die on that hill.
There you go. There you go. There you go. All right. Shay, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
That's gonna do it for this version of Behind Enemy Lines. Want to thank cousin Shane once again from that ACC podcast. My name is Brandon Drumm, OU Insider. You guys have a blessed day.
See you.